Yeah, so my name is Nate Street. I am a vice president at JP Morgan. So I've always had a kind of a lifelong interest in computers. I originally was a system administrator for the Navy, or I was a contractor for the Navy, and that eventually kind of pivoted into a role in a SOC position, a Security Operations Center position with the TSA. And so I was there for 2 years, and I decided that was really where I made the decision that I really liked cybersecurity. I thought the field was very fascinating and interesting. There were always different threats that I had a chance to kind of review and perform instant response on. And I decided at that point that I wanted to focus my career in this field. But yeah, so my dad's an engineer. So he worked for NASA, and he basically was working for the space program. He was going down to mission control. I say all this because we had computers since I was about 5 years old. I was working on Mac 2CXs back in the 80s. I really enjoyed programming. I had a Mac Plus. I loved BASIC. I loved being able to kind of control computers and working at that very low level. I was creating applications. I was uploading them to America Online, just to kind of date myself. And so I liked programming from middle school on. So I was doing this programming stuff since I was about 12 years old, about 7 years before I went to school. Um, and so that kind of is what launched my interest in just computers in general. The fact that I can control like every aspect of it, and it was basically limited by my own kind of imagination. Yes, so I've had mentors along the way. In fact, so I also studied music pretty seriously in high school, and so another member of the trumpet section, I'm a trumpet player. He actually went to focus on cybersecurity back in around 2000, and he basically reached out to me and said that people with a music background actually do really well in these fields, and they're able to kind of take data, they're able to analyze patterns and make decisions based on those patterns very quickly. And that's the skill set that's very valuable in cybersecurity. And so he's the one who really kind of said, hey, you should go out for this position and see if this is something that you can do. And so that's what kind of led to my interview with the TSA Security Operations Center and my eventual like focus in this field. So not something that people really highlight. I was kind of surprised at how much documentation. You really have to be accurate with the evidence that you collect when you're doing log analysis. Some of the things that you do might be used in the courtroom. I communicate with all sorts of people who have various backgrounds. I'm always kind of surprised. Some things that I think are just like everyone knows this. Everyone doesn't know all these things. I wish we had Python when I was back in high school because it was around, but I didn't know that it existed. But that's a beautiful language to really learn how to program. Those skills, I think, programming are so fundamental to just learning how computers work that I think they're really kind of fluid and will kind of really lay the foundation for you to be successful in any of the areas of cybersecurity. Whenever I'm talking to anyone who expresses interest in cybersecurity, I say that you really should understand the network. You should understand DNS, DHCP. You should understand how communication and traffic works to a certain degree on the network. Because when you're doing, at least with my, where I kind of went through the instant response path, understanding how we communicate on the network, servers, hosts communicate, you have to understand how DNS works, and that's just a foundation to cybersecurity. So I'm a member of the audit department at JP Morgan. So we evaluate the cybersecurity, how the first line of business, which is cybersecurity operations, does their business. How are they mitigating risk? And so I look at all aspects. They wanted people within the team who had actual operations experience so that when they provide responses to us, that we could evaluate them. And not just, if they were saying a bunch of information that just wasn't factually accurate, it left the firm to risk that they would have someone who could actually challenge that in an independent way. We have like very strong threat intelligence team, very strong penetration testing, red team assessments that we perform. I wouldn't get that exposure if I was just looking at it from the lens of just, okay, I'm an instant response. I monitor, ArcSight, Splunk, whatever, and I perform that. I'm able to see everything and see how a world-class firm actually does business. So I attended the University of Maryland in College Park, and I originally started out as a computer science major. I thought that would be the what I would graduate with because I did take a substantial number of programming classes in high school. I loved programming. Um, but I eventually pivoted to sociology. I ended up as a sociology major, which I think is kind of interesting. After I finished at University of Maryland, I took additional classes at Montgomery College, actually, and they were computer science classes because I thought that unless I had some computer science classes on my resume at some point, that it would be more difficult kind of pivoting into that role. I also worked part-time at a Circuit City, which I don't know if people are going to actually know what that is. A router has a specific meaning. It performs a specific function. A switch has a specific meaning. It performs a specific function. And they're different. And when you deal with people with a variety of different backgrounds, they might not realize that it's more than just like a networking device, but each of them have a specific purpose on the network and perform a specific function. So the challenge has really been communicating, how all these things kind of fit to protect the network. I do want to do more along the pen testing side, just to kind of see what it's like and understand the tools. It's been really the SANS CTF events, capture flag events, have been really eye opening. Again, it's the same thing where I thought, I've been doing analysis for almost a decade now, and I go there and I'm still learning new ways of doing things that I didn't know were possible. And so and that's kind of one of the reasons why I like cybersecurity, is because the field is always changing, and I'm always kind of being introduced to new things that keep it exciting. There's never a boring day in cybersecurity. I would definitely focus in computers. There's basically a job for kind of everyone, because it doesn't matter how technical you are. If you're less technical, there's an area for you to kind of focus and specialize in. And we need people who really take it seriously and who are interested and who will do the work to really kind of complete the job.